The Highland Resort, nestled among dense forests, seemed like the perfect getaway for Ryan Scott, his wife Lisa, and their 8-year-old daughter Anna. Far from the bustling city, the resort offered peace and natural beauty. But this silence, this time, concealed something sinister. The family set out for a hike along a mountain trail. Thick trees flanked the path, creating the feeling that they were alone in the world. Anna, wearing a bright jacket, ran ahead, playing with her favorite teddy bear. Her laughter echoed between the trees, but soon it was replaced by a sound Ryan would remember for the rest of his life. An agonizing, desperate scream. "Dad! Mom! Help!" Anna screamed somewhere deep in the woods. Ryan bolted forward, desperately trying to find his daughter. The cries seemed to move, sometimes closer, sometimes farther away, as though someone was deliberately toying with his mind. After a few minutes, he saw her. Anna stood on a narrow path, but a man was approaching her. His face was hidden beneath a dark hood, and a knife gleamed in his hand. "Leave her alone," Ryan shouted, charging forward. But the man was faster. With one swift blow, he struck Lisa, who had been running behind Ryan. She cried out, clutching her side where a red stain was now spreading. She collapsed, gasping for air. Ryan hesitated for a moment, torn between wanting to save his daughter and helping his wife. Anna screamed, struggling to break free from the stranger's grip. He roughly seized her and, despite her resistance, dragged her toward a van parked a short distance down an almost invisible road. She kicked, cried, and screamed loudly, "Dad! Help! Mom!" These cries seemed to pierce Ryan's heart. He sprinted after them, but the van started moving almost immediately, leaving only tire tracks and a few drops of Anna's blood trailing from her hand. Ryan raced down the path, chasing the van as long as he could. He watched as the vehicle disappeared between the trees, its engine sounds fading into the mountain echoes. The tire tracks led to a bend in the road, but there they stopped abruptly at a large cliff, as if the van had vanished into the air. In sheer helplessness, Ryan screamed until his voice broke. He dropped to his knees beside the bloodstains, now the only reminder of his daughter. Turning back to Lisa, he saw that she was pale but still breathing. Shock and terror gripped them both. No one could fathom what had happened to their daughter, but the worst part was that they couldn't do anything to help. Later, when the police arrived, they found only Anna's abandoned teddy bear, bloodstains, and symbols carved into a nearby tree, intricate, unsettling markings. No one could explain where they had come from. Ryan felt something inside him snap. He sat next to Lisa, holding her close, and repeated, almost like a prayer, "I'll find her. I'll find her." But somewhere in the woods, the distant sound of Anna's cries still echoed, mingling with the wind, like a sinister reminder of what had only just begun. The gloomy evening in Brookfield swallowed everything with its silence. Ryan sat in the living room, gripping his phone. His eyes were red from sleepless nights, and his mind was torn between despair and rage. In the darkness of the room, only the light from the screen flickered on his face as he rewound the footage from the car's rearview camera again and again. He was searching for something, any clue, any trace. And then he saw it. A white van, parked near the campsite that night. The license plate was partially blurred, but just clear enough to try and track it down. Sheriff Julia Grayson, who had been called to the scene, quickly organized a search. They combed the area until they found the van deep in the woods. But what they discovered made even the most seasoned officers freeze. The van was burned to the ground, leaving only a charred metal frame. Inside, they found remnants of children's belongings. A scorched shoe, a piece of a teddy bear that resembled Anna's, and a small bracelet with her name on it. Ryan collapsed to his knees when he saw the bracelet. His daughter had been here, but where was she now? Sheriff Grayson ordered a thorough search of the crime scene. In the ashes, they found something even more horrifying: traces of charred bones. The remains belonged to various children, but certainly not adults. It was hell on earth created by human hands. A cold shiver ran down Julia's spine as she realized this was not the first such case. Julia began reviewing other missing children cases in the region and soon discovered a terrifying pattern. In the last 3 years, 8 children had gone missing. Their bodies were found only in parts. Limbs or torsos were scattered in different places, as if someone had deliberately dismembered them to leave families with nothing but fragments of memories. Back home, Ryan sat in the dark. Lisa, still recovering from the attack, was sleeping in another room. She was broken, her eyes always focused on one spot, as if she was trying to find Anna there. But Ryan couldn't allow himself to sleep. His mind was constantly on alert until the phone rang. The number was hidden. Ryan. The voice on the other end sounded calm, even playful. Anna was a good girl, obedient. But what do you think? How long do you think you'll be able to remember that? Ryan froze, his heart clenched, as if someone had grabbed it with an iron fist. "Who are you?" he shouted into the phone. "What did you do to my daughter?" On the other end, a harsh, soulless laugh echoed. "She would have been your pride, Ryan. But now she's just my little secret." The line went dead. Ryan collapsed to his knees, feeling his world shatter. The screams of Anna that echoed in his mind felt real. He could hear her calling for him, begging for help, but he couldn't do anything. This call wasn't just mockery, it was a warning, a challenge. Ryan realized that this game was just beginning, and his opponent was a true monster. Every minute he wasted could mean the end for his daughter. But where to search? Where to run? The answers melted away, like blood on the tracks he had been following that first day. Ryan never imagined he would ever discover a world beyond his wildest nightmares. After the call from the unknown voice, he could no longer sit idly by. The man spent his nights at the computer, diving into the darkest corners of the internet, searching for any trace, no matter how small. And it was there, in the dark web, that he stumbled upon a platform that seemed crafted by the devil himself. Before his eyes were videos of children, terrified and chained, standing in front of cameras. Numbers appeared on the screen, bets. Ryan felt his blood boil. He could barely breathe when he saw what seemed like a sick joke. In one of the videos, he saw Anna. She was in a cage, pressing against the metal bars, her eyes filled with tears and despair. She was alive, but she looked exhausted and terrified. Ryan took screenshots, saved the footage, and immediately went to the police. But Sheriff Grayson was skeptical. "Ryan, I understand your desperation, but this isn't evidence. Videos from the dark web. It could be a fake, a montage. I can't use this in the investigation. This is my daughter. I saw her there." Ryan shouted, his anger barely contained. However, faced with indifference and bureaucracy, he decided to act on his own. By analyzing the video's metadata, he traced it back to an old factory on the outskirts of the city. The building had been abandoned for years, its windows boarded up, and the grounds overgrown with weeds. But now it was the key to his search. Ryan went there at night, armed only with a flashlight, a knife, and the determination to find his daughter. The building looked menacing even from a distance. Its silhouette, lit by the moon, seemed to warn of danger. Inside, the air reeked of stagnation, mixed with the metallic scent of blood. In the first room he entered, there were children's drawings carved into the walls, done with a knife or some sharp object. Among them were names, dozens, if not hundreds, carved into the walls. In the center of the room stood a bed, on which lay a bloody stuffed toy. Ryan moved on, his footsteps echoing through the halls. He found a small room with bars where they kept the children. The metal bars were covered in rust and something sticky, like blood. On the floor was Anna's scarf. He picked it up and saw dark stains. It was her blood. His legs weakened, but he forced himself to keep going. In the next room, he stopped, unable to believe his eyes. In the center were freezers. When he opened one, he nearly dropped the flashlight. Inside were the bodies of children, dismembered, arranged so neatly it looked painfully planned. Only fragments of their faces remained, impossible to identify who they were. Ryan felt his whole body tremble. He slowly closed the freezer, his hand visibly shaking. Fear turned into rage. He started checking rooms one by one until he heard a faint rustle in one of them. He turned on the flashlight and saw a small hand hiding behind a pile of junk. Ryan rushed over, pushed the debris aside, and found a boy, about 10 years old. He was pale, thin, and barely breathing. His eyes were wide with fear. "They'll come back. They always come back," the boy whispered in a trembling voice, and within seconds, he lay motionless. Ryan stood in the center of the eerie room, looking around. His heart pounded wildly, but not from fear, more from rage and helplessness. Anna wasn't there. Despite all the evidence, despite everything he had seen, he couldn't find her. Now, only the silence of the factory seemed to mock him, reminding him that countless children, like his daughter, had disappeared in this place. He slowly picked up her blood-stained scarf from the floor and clutched it in his hand like the most precious treasure. Ryan fought the urge to destroy everything around him, to burn the factory down along with its horrifying secrets. But he knew it wouldn't bring Anna back. Ryan was observant. He wasn't a detective or an investigator, but years of working as a mechanic had taught him how to read people, to sense their intentions. When he first noticed Joel Green, something about his behavior struck Ryan as suspicious. Joel was too diligently friendly, always too visible, too good at gaining trust. It was a mask, and Ryan could feel it. At first, it was just doubt. Small things that went beyond normal. Joel's excessive interest in his daughter, the strange look he gave when he lingered for a moment, staring at her portrait on the desk in the garage, the odd questions about the family. It wasn't obvious, but Ryan was alert to everything, especially after Anna disappeared. Every step, every day that his daughter remained missing, Ryan asked questions no one could answer. And the more he searched, the more he felt that Joel might be part of something much bigger, something lurking in the shadows of this town. He couldn't stay calm. Everything pointed to him. Ryan started following him, not noticing how his obsession became the only meaning in his life. He watched Joel using car cameras, observed his behavior on the street, at work. And soon, he noticed something even stranger. The unusual rush with which Joel sometimes left the coffee shop, constantly refusing meetings or communication with people, especially at night. When Ryan realized that Joel was a key figure in an organization turning children into commodities, it shocked him, but at the same time, it was an unexpected revelation. Joel wasn't just a victim. He was part of a system that didn't just abduct children but used them for horrific purposes. Ryan knew that this man could lead him to the true source of this hell. And then, in the dark of night, his determination turned into an overpowering desire to get to the truth, even if he had to go through fire, tearing himself apart, until he found Anna. One evening, when the coffee shop had already closed, Ryan waited for Joel to leave, then suddenly attacked him in a dark alley. A heavy blow to Joel's head knocked him out, and he collapsed to the ground. Ryan dragged him to his car, tied him up, and covered his head with a bag. Joel had no chance to resist. When Joel came to, he was tied to a chair in a dilapidated garage. The place was poorly lit, the smell of dampness and oil creating a suffocating atmosphere. In front of him stood Ryan, his eyes empty, almost lifeless. "Where is my daughter?" His voice was low and cold, like a steel blade. You've gone crazy? I don't know anything." Joel gasped in response. Ryan didn't wait. He raised a heated crowbar to Joel's hand and touched it to his skin. A scream echoed throughout the garage, but Ryan remained unmoved. "Every scream is a minute my daughter spends in fear," he said calmly. Joel tried to lie, but Ryan was relentless. He pulled out a set of tools: a hammer, pliers, knives. For the first few minutes, Joel screamed, trying to convince Ryan that he was wrong. But with every passing minute, his confidence faded. "You're all monsters. You think you can hide behind your coffee shops and smiles? No. Tonight, you'll feel what those kids felt," Ryan said, squeezing Joel's fingers with the pliers. Joel screamed, but the pain broke him. He admitted to being a middleman, coordinating the sale of children. He revealed that the children were not only sold into slavery, but also used for hunting games. They take them to a farm in the woods. The next game starts in a few hours. Your daughter might be there. Ryan froze. Hours. He had only a few hours to save Anna. But rage clouded his mind. You deserve more than just death, he whispered. He made Joel sign a farewell note in which he confessed his guilt. Then, without hesitation, took his life. Ryan knew this was just the beginning. Ryan pulled out the map where Joel had marked the location of the farm. He no longer thought about the consequences. The only goal filled his mind: to save Anna, no matter what it took. In the dark of night, he got into his car and headed toward the farm, leaving behind the garage filled with an eerie silence that was no longer disturbed by Joel's scream. Ryan arrived at the farm when the night had swallowed the world, leaving only darkness and fear behind. The moon barely broke through the clouds, casting an ominous light that barely helped him navigate the area. He left the car to the side, pushing through the dense forest, hearing only his heavy breath and the rustling around him. Every step was hard, his body exhausted, but a fire of rage and the desire for revenge for his daughter, for her suffering, burned within him. After a few minutes, he reached a clearing, and everything fell into place. It was not what he had imagined. Instead of reaching a wasteland or an old farm, he found a place of luxury. Buildings furnished with expensive furniture, pools, greenhouses with exotic plants, and dozens of cars with plates that spoke of the wealth and influence of those who had come here. It was a place for the rich. People gathered for one thing: to watch a deadly hunt. Ryan held his breath. Here it was the essence of horror. Amidst this insane luxury stood people hosting their celebration. Men in suits who were unashamed of their cruelty. Women with cold, indifferent gazes, unmoved by what was happening in the woods. They laughed, sipped champagne, and prepared for a hunting expedition with no mercy or compassion. For them, it was just a show. The children, like him, were thought of as soulless beings who were meant to be the prey. They were let loose in the woods, given a few seconds to flee. Then armed hunters would follow them, ready for any brutality. Everything was planned. The children stood no chance, just as he hadn't when he first saw it all. Ryan stepped out of the shadows and realized it was time to act. He fought with the guards, each movement trying to give his daughter even the slightest chance of survival. He wasn't physically prepared for these kinds of battles, but his desperation and hatred for everything happening here pushed him forward. Finally, after a fierce struggle, he managed to break into the central part of the farm. In the cage at the center, he saw his daughter. She was in rags, her face battered and exhausted. Her eyes were empty, filled with pain and fear. She looked like a lost soul. When he approached, she didn't recognize him at first. No, she just stared at him as if he were another part of the nightmare surrounding them. Despite her horrific state, Anna still recognized her father. A flicker of hope appeared in her eyes, but she was too broken to signal for an escape. What she had endured was beyond comprehension. She had been forced to watch as other children, her friends, became part of this game. They became prey for the hunters. With each passing minute, they grew closer to death. Ryan felt the coldness seep into his core. With every step, he saw the death his daughter had already endured. If not for this horror, he wouldn't have been able to withstand what was happening here. When he took Anna, it was already too late. Gunfire began to ring out. In the silence of the night, the whistle of bullets cutting through the air was audible. Ryan shielded his daughter with his body, trying to escape, but the bullets eventually found him. He felt pain, sharp and unbearable, and immediately understood that this could be his final step. As he grew closer to death, he still tried to run, but the chances of survival had already been obliterated. Anna, seeing that her father could no longer move, ran on her own. She knew that there was no more fear or pain in her veins, only instinct, but they caught her, and now, on her face, that expression Ryan had seen before reappeared. It was the expression of hopelessness. They threw her into the cage that was her prison. The hunters laughed, discussing how she, like the other children, was part of this game. When Anna was placed back into the cage, one of the hunters, with a slight smile on his face, tossed out, "This is just the beginning, little girl," and all these words shattered his heart completely. Ryan was dead. Anna was left behind, and her pain became part of this hellish world with no escape. And all of this was just part of the torment that would return again and again. If you liked the story, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos. Leave a comment about which story you'd like to see next. And remember, every story has its end, but not all of them can be forgotten.